When you think of the most dangerous carbohydrate, what pops into your head? Sugar, right? For most of us, that's the go-to answer. But what if I told you there's another carb out there, one that's way more common and, you could argue, a lot more dangerous? Yeah, this is the #1 carb you should really be avoiding. And I bet it's not what you think.
For decades, we've been told to scan nutrition labels for one thing: sugar. But you know, what if that laser focus has actually made us miss an even bigger threat? A substance that can spike our blood sugar even more than table sugar does, but it's hiding in plain sight.
Okay, here's your first clue. This mystery ingredient, it costs just 20 cents a pound. And the reason it's so dirt cheap is because it's heavily subsidized. That means our tax dollars are actually helping food companies buy this stuff for next to nothing. And that makes it the perfect, super cheap filler for, well, all sorts of products. Let's just look at the rap sheet for this thing, okay? First off, it spikes your blood sugar even more aggressively than pure table sugar. It directly contributes to visceral fat, you know, the really dangerous kind that wraps around your organs. It's like a feast for bad gut bacteria, it triggers inflammation all over your body, and it raises that small particle LDL, the specific type of bad cholesterol that's linked to messing up your arteries. It's a metabolic nightmare, plain and simple. So it's pretty clear we're not talking about the usual suspect here. To find the real king of harmful carbs, we've got to look beyond the sugar bowl. So by now, you might be guessing what it is. I mean, this stuff is in thousands of products, everything from snacks to baby formula. The average person eats a staggering amount of it. We're talking anywhere from 65 to maybe 250 pounds a year. So what is it? The culprit is industrial starch. Now, you'll see it on ingredient lists, but it'll have names like modified food starch, cornstarch, or maltodextrin. And yeah, while it's technically a starch, it is worlds apart from the natural kind you'd find in, say, a potato you pull out of your garden. All right, so let's dig into this a little deeper. It's really, really important to understand what makes this version of starch so different and, frankly, so damaging. Okay, here's the absolute key difference. On one side, you've got natural starch, like in a whole potato. It's got this complex structure, it's bundled up with fiber, and all of that slows down digestion. But then, on the other side, you've got industrial starch, just this pure white powder. It's been refined, totally stripped of all its protective fiber, and processed so that the bonds holding the sugar molecules together are incredibly weak. And the result? It basically turns into sugar almost instantly in your body. So how in the world do you get from a whole plant to this refined white powder? Well, let me tell you, the process is not exactly natural. It's not just about grinding something up. This starch is fundamentally changed or modified using a whole cocktail of industrial chemicals that you would never, ever find in a home kitchen. And the list of chemicals they use is pretty jarring. We're talking about things like vinyl acetate, which is a possible human carcinogen, and sodium hypochlorite, which is literally bleach. Yep, the same kind of chemical used to whiten your laundry is used to process this food ingredient. So you're probably asking, how is this even legal? Well, these chemicals fall under a special designation called RAS, which stands for Generally Recognized as Safe. But here's the problem. That status is often self-regulated by the industry itself, and it doesn't require any rigorous, independent long-term testing. It's basically a loophole that lets these substances into our food supply with very little oversight. Okay, now that we know what this stuff is and how it's made, let's go find out where it's hiding. Because I can almost guarantee you, it's in your pantry right now. Its main job is to be a cheap filler. It adds weight and texture to all these ultra-processed foods for just pennies. And here's the real kicker. Because it's technically a starch and not a sugar, it doesn't even show up under added sugars on the nutrition label. It's like this invisible carbohydrate bomb. You actually have to hunt for it in the fine print of the ingredients list. Let's take a look at potato chips. You probably think they're mostly potato and oil, right? Well, the reality is a little different. A whopping 65% of a typical chip is actually industrial starch, and another 30% is industrial seed oil. The actual potato and flavorings, they make up just a tiny, tiny fraction. All right, now let's look at crackers. It's the same story, but even more extreme. A staggering 70% of a typical cracker is industrial starch, combined with 25% seed oil. So you see, these aren't really grain-based snacks. They're basically starch and oil delivery systems. And finally, let's talk about French fries. This one is maybe the most powerful example. A mind-blowing 80% of a fast food French fry is starch. It's not just a fried potato. It's a vehicle for consuming absolutely massive quantities of highly refined starch and industrial oil. So what happens when you combine these two dominant ingredients, industrial starch and industrial seed oils? Well, you create the perfect storm for metabolic damage, the ultimate junk food. This right here is the basic formula for almost all modern junk food. You start with a huge base of industrial starch, like 55 to 75%. Then you add a bunch of industrial seed oils, say 20 to 35%, and then you combine them under extremely high heat and pressure. This process actually creates new compounded toxic byproducts that are even more inflammatory and damaging to our cells than the ingredients were to begin with. And who's eating this stuff? Well, the numbers are pretty shocking. For young kids, 65% of their daily calories come from these ultra-processed foods. For teenagers, it jumps to 70%. And even for adults, it's over half our diet at 55%. So this isn't some small part of our food world. For a lot of people, this is the food world. All of this leads us to a really fundamental and maybe even uncomfortable question about what we're actually eating. Let's just go back to the biological definition of food for a second. It's something that sustains life, promotes growth, and repairs our bodies. Now, a substance that creates visceral fat, triggers inflammation, and damages our cells, that doesn't really seem to fit the definition, does it? So, this leaves us with a challenge. We've just pulled back the curtain on one of the most common, yet hidden, ingredients in our modern diet. And the final question is for you. Go take a look at the labels in your own kitchen. Do the contents of your pantry really meet the definition of food? It's a question that's definitely worth asking.